Massey here. I just wanted to give you a quick walkthrough of Lab 1.02, which is just going to introduce some basic concepts um, to the Python programming language, specifically surrounding providing inputs to the console and to identifying different data types in Python. So let's go ahead and just really quickly, we're going to fire up Anaconda, which I already have open. And we're actually going to open up our development environment. We're going to use Spider because it's built right into Anaconda. It will do everything we need. So go ahead and launch Spider. And then just really quick, an overview of the Spider development environment. So remember that all our programs really exist as text files. A program is just a series of instructions that we write in a text file. But our development environment just makes it a lot easier to write these programs out. We can test them as we write them, and we can run code in our console really quick to see kind of what's going on in our program as we build it. So our development environment is built of these pieces that we talked about in class. One is just our editor, which allows us to write our Python script out in our text file, basically write out our program. We also have our console, which allows us to run Python on the fly. So it allows us to input really quick commands and see what the outputs are. It also allows us to see the outputs from our program that we write if we run that program. And then also, our development environment just gives us some extra features, a nice help window in case we don't know how to use certain functions, a file explorer to find files and if we're working with many files in our program, and just a variable explorer that allows us to track variables throughout our program. For this first lab, we don't need to write any scripts. We won't even use the help menu. We can live right here in the console and just run everything in our Python console and see what we get out. So all we need to do is worry about the Python console here. So let me just grab the lab really quick so we can run through it. The first part of this lab is very, very simple. It just has you practicing using some very basic mathematical operations, inputting them into the console, and seeing what we get as an output from Python. So we can go ahead and give that a try. The first one is just 5 plus 2 times 2. 5 plus 2 times 2. And you can see what we get as an output. We get 9. And this makes sense. Python follows the order of operations just like you would in math class. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 5 is 9, right? Also, in Python, we can also add parentheses. So if we're writing out really complicated mathematical things, or if we wanted to say do 5 plus 2 times 2, we could do that as well. We could do the 5 plus 2, and then do times 2, and we get 14 out. Because 5 plus 2 is 7, 7 times 2 is 14, right? So we can do that as well, just like we would in math class. So I'll let you go ahead and finish the first of part 1. Section 2 has you just inputting different text. Section 3 and Section 4, the same thing. So I'll let you explore that. Excuse me. I'll let you explore that on your own just by inputting these different things into the console and seeing what you get out. Now, for part 2, notice it has you playing around, again, by inputting things in the console, but it has you identifying these things right here. Is where you're getting out a string, an integer, or a float. And what does that mean? So string, integers, and floats are just some of the few but many data types that you'll see in Python. So whenever we input information into Python, we call it data, and data comes in many types. And one thing that you need to know about data types is data types kind of dictate what things you can do to that data. So certain data can only have certain operations performed to it. A really easy example is if I tried to add the number 5 to a word, let's just say the word is word. Well, what's 5 plus word? Well, I can't add 5 to a word. That doesn't even make sense, and Python tells me that. I get an error when I try to run that, a type error because, well, the data type was incorrect, the data type being that I can't add a word to a number. So let's take a quick look at some data types, and I'm just going to let you finish the lab as I kind of go over some of the different data types that exist in Python. So the easiest data type to recognize is just something like a number. So if I type in the number 8, I get out 8. If I want to know what data type an object is in Python, I can actually use a built-in function called type. I can just type the word type and then put that object in parentheses. So if I want to know the number 8, well, what's the data type of that? Go ahead and hit type 8. And you can see I get, I get outputted to the console the data type, which is int. That stands for integer, which makes sense. The number 8 is an integer. One important distinction that Python makes is that there's a difference between integers and what we call floating point numbers, or numbers with decimals in them. So if I actually have the number 8, which is an integer, if I go ahead and run type on, say, 8.0, well, you think 8 and 8.0 are the same thing. Well, in Python, they're actually treated differently. That returns float for a floating point number, just meaning that it has a decimal. So just know that there is a distinction between integers, whole numbers, and floating point numbers, numbers with decimals. They're treated as two different data types in Python. Some other data types that'll be very, very common. Probably the most common will be strings. And strings are just words. And we represent strings or words or sentences. We represent text in Python by putting them inside of quotation marks. So if I write hello world in quotes, I get outputted hello world. Well, if I run type on hello world, I get back out str. And str stands for string. So text in Python is referred to as strings, right? One important thing to note is that it doesn't matter if I use a double quote or a single quote. So I can go ahead and use a double quote, hello world, and I get the same exact thing out, string. So a string is just text. It could be a single word, a single letter, multiple letters. It does have to be in those quotation marks. If I run type on T, it says T is not defined. T is nothing to Python right now. It's going, why are you giving me a letter T? It doesn't know that that's supposed to be text because I didn't put it in quotation marks. So anytime you want to use text, display text on the screen, you're going to have to put it in quotes. Couple other data types that you don't really need to know about yet. I believe if you look at the lab, the three you need to know are strings, integers, and floats. Yep, so we've covered those. But there are many other data types that you'll see as we go through the course. One of the most common will be lists, which we build with these brackets. If I want to make a shopping list, I could go, okay, we need eggs, we need milk, we need candy. There's my shopping list. And so that's a list. If I hit type on that, it tells me it's a list. It's got 3 items in the list: eggs, milk, candy. Another really common data type that you'll see that you've probably worked with in the past if you did computer coding, but if you're not familiar with it, it's okay, is true-false values. We call them Booleans. So for example, I can run really quick. Is 3 greater than 2? 3 is greater than 2, so it runs true. Is 3 greater than 5? No, it gives me false. True-false values are referred to as Booleans. So if I run type on true, it tells me that's a Boolean. I can also run type on the expression. The expression, let's say 3 greater than 2, we already know returns a Boolean true. So what is the type of 3 greater than 2? It's a Boolean. Because 3 greater than 2 will return true. It will return a Boolean. Those are just different data types that you'll see in Python. The most important are going to be your strings, integers, and floats. And then as we go further in the course, we'll experiment with lists and Booleans and see how those work. But just a quick introduction to data types in Python.